I've been itching to answer this question since the anniversary of the book. And you're the first one who's asked me, and I will answer willingly the question. Salman Rushdie wrote a book towards the late 80s called Satanic Verses. Following the book, there was widespread condemnation, justifiably, from the Muslims, and there's no harm in condemning a book, and there's no harm in speaking against the book, and Muslims have a true and correct right to do that, because the book contains fallacies and lies and insults against the Islamic religion and against the Prophet Muhammad, and we have a right to do so. Then a group of Muslims took it one stage further. They demonstrated in the streets of Britain, in Bradford, in Birmingham, I think in Nottingham, in London, in Pakistan, in cities across the world, burning the book and entering into clashes with the authorities, so much so that hundreds of people were killed in some of these demonstrations across the world, in Malaysia, in Pakistan, and in other places. Then another group of Muslims, so-called Muslims, took it one step further. They issued a fatwa for the killing or the assassination of Salman Rushdie. As for the first stage, then no doubt this is something that is permissible and allowable for a person to refute and to repudiate the falsehood that is contained within the Satanic verses. As for the second stage and third stage, this has no evidence in the Quranic text, nor in the prophetic tradition, to partake in such activities. No doubt I can appear on radio stations and condemn the book and mention the fallacies and the great insult contained in that book. There's no harm in that, in propagating that to the non-Muslims. Just as we mentioned during the Danish cartoon fiasco. When those cartoons came out, then no doubt those cartoons are offensive towards Muslims. And just because we live in a so-called free, liberal, so-called democracy, then that still does not justify the insult or the insulting the dead. Less so the dead who are religious figures who are not known except for piety and goodness and justice. And on top of that, a cartoon that basically propagates a lie and a fallacy that the Prophet Muhammad was somehow responsible for propagating terrorist ideology. So Muslims have a right to speak out and to write and to justifiably, with knowledge and with wisdom and with fair preaching and with fair debate these issues and repudiate and refute them. And this is what should have been done with Salman Rushdie. As for Khomeini issuing a fatwa, can't remember how much it was in those days, was it $1 million or $2 million? So he wants to use American currency to pay for the death of Salman Rushdie. This type of verdict is something that is against the Islamic legislation. It is something that is condemned for a number of reasons. Number one, that Khomeini himself has no right to speak about affairs that he himself has fallen into. The reason why Salman Rushdie was condemned was because Salman Rushdie insulted the wives of the Prophet Muhammad. May the peace and blessings of Allah be upon him, accusing them of, in essence, being whores and adulteresses. So, Ayatollah Khomeini and Salman Rushdie, when he was asked about this point, he said, well, I'm only writing fiction. I don't actually mean it. I'm only writing fiction. So he wrote a fictitious novel attacking the family and the wives of the Prophet Muhammad. Ayatollah Khomeini himself actually believes as a part of his doctrine that the wives of the Prophet, may the peace and blessings of Allah be upon him, were in reality whores and adulteresses. This is the belief of Ayatollah Khomeini, that the wives of the Prophet, like Aisha and other than Aisha, and likewise the disciples of the Prophet, that they were apostates, renegades, heretics, and accusing some of them of being sodomites. This was the accusation of Khomeini against the disciples of the Prophet Muhammad and against the wives of the Prophet Muhammad. So Khomeini himself is in no position to be defending the honor and the family of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, the Prophet Muhammad, may the peace and blessings of Allah be upon him. Thereafter, to march in the streets and to claim that they wish to burn books, and then they fight against the police, as what occurred in Pakistan, and several Muslims were killed in Pakistan, in Egypt, in Malaysia, if I recall from those times of my days at university at the time. And I remember these events taking place in the late 80s. And even then it didn't make any sense to me that this one individual can be refuted, can be spoken against, and books can be written against him, so the Muslims are made aware and non-Muslims are made to understand why the Muslims feel so offended. But instead of that they are laying their life on the line and Muslims are killing Muslims in Muslim lands, and likewise that they are giving an image of Islam that is incorrect and wrong. Islam does not allow demonstrations in the street. It is not a means of rectification, and it is not a means of bringing to light the problems that the Muslims are facing. It has never been a prophetic tradition to go out marching in the streets, demonstrating and campaigning in the streets. If you want to deal with this affair, then this affair is dealt with knowledge. To deal with Salman Rushdie is not under the jurisdiction of Iran nor any other Muslim country. And for an Islamic ruling to take place requires that individual to be tried in an Islamic court and in an Islamic land under an Islamic judiciary who will pass the verdict, and that verdict is to be respected. None of that took place, but rather a verdict was passed and money was placed upon the head of an individual. No doubt that individual, I hold him to be perverted, and I hold that individual to be weak in his literary skills anyway. And anyone who's read any of the works of Salman Rushdie will find that he's not the easiest of reads anyway, to be honest with you. And he would have been best ignored rather than being faced, to be honest with you. And that would have been the best way to deal with him. But anyway, we condemn the verdict of Khomeini. It has no jurisdiction. And secondly, demonstrating in the streets and burning books does not benefit the situation either. We are living in a land in which knowledge and academia and knowledge-based arguments will win the day. So if we refer back, if we keep away from rabble and rabble raising, and we stick to knowledge, then our argument can be conveyed. And I truly believe, I sincerely believe, and I said the same thing when the Danish cartoon incident took place, that if we as Muslims, those Muslims who have knowledge, were to convey to the non-Muslim community the reason why we dislike the fact that those cartoons were made, most non-Muslims would understand. Most non-Muslims would understand. I truly believe that. Just like most non-Muslims and most Christians would despise the fact that Jesus be displayed, just as Muslims would despise the fact that Jesus be displayed in an unbefitting and unbecoming manner. We would despise that as Muslims. We would despise that Jesus. So it's not just the fact, rather if a cartoon was to be made of Jesus Christ, alayhi salam, may the peace and blessings of Allah be upon him, then the Muslim will be as enraged. As Allah mentions in the Quran, لَا نُفَرِّقْ بَيْنَ أَحَدٍ مِّنْكُمْ, that we do not distinguish between any of the prophets. To curse one of them is to curse all of them. So cursing Jesus, you have cursed the brother of Muhammad. To curse Muhammad, you have cursed the brother of Moses. So we do not tolerate and we do not allow the cursing of any one of them. And it is only by way of knowledge and dissemination of knowledge and spreading the understanding of this affair that I truly believe, rather than marching in the streets of London like those ignorant Muslims did, running around London with black placards saying that genocide is coming to London and there will be another 7/7 and we will kill you and death to so-and-so. That does not benefit any discussion. Nor does it enlighten the non-Muslims towards the problems and towards the grievances that many of the Muslims hold. Those grievances should be discussed in the light of knowledge and in the light of an adult academic discussion. And that is my answer.